Today on our 2016 Ford F-250, we're going to be taking a look at the Custom Underbed Installation Kit for the B&W Companion fifth wheel trailer hitch, part number BWG NRK 1111-5W. This fifth wheel installation kit is designed to let you install your B&W fifth wheel companion trailer hitches. The adapters are part number BWR VK 3500 or part number BWR VK 3400. The underbed design of this kit allows for full truck bed access, and when you're ready, it's under 5 minutes to convert your empty truck bed into a fifth wheel hitch. We'll start off by unlocking our B&W hitch and installing our fifth wheel adapter. We have ours pre-assembled, but you can adjust the uprights here depending on your truck and your trailer combination. At this point, the hitch is ready to attach to the trailer. Now there's a clip here that you release. Basically it's a safety pin. Then you swing the handle out and you're ready to back onto your trailer. Once you're secure onto your trailer, you can reinstall the clip. And since this fifth wheel installation kit doubles as a gooseneck hitch, when you're not towing your fifth wheel, you can remove it. And this frees up the hole to reinsert the hitch ball whenever you need it. Now we're going to show you how to install the custom bed under kit for the B&W Companion fifth wheel trailer hitches. To begin our installation, we're going to need to remove our spare tire. And this is just going to make it easier so we have more room under the truck. Our next step is going to be measuring where we're going to be putting a hole in our bed. Now, if we take our tape measure here, and I made a mark right here. Next, we're going to measure the distance between the two wheel wells, and where the center matches up with our intersecting line, that's where we're going to be drilling our hole. Now, before we drill our 4-inch hole, I'm going to be drilling a pilot hole with a 1/4-inch drill bit. Now, I want to mention here, what I'm using here is just a piece of wood that I used my hole saw and cut a 4-inch hole in it. That way, it'll keep the hole saw from jumping around, and I can keep it steady by standing on it while I'm drilling. Now I'm just going to come back and vacuum up all my metal shavings and clean it up a little bit. Now, since we did just drill a hole and we have bare metal here, I do want to mention to be careful because it is going to be sharp, but I'm going to take a paint marker and I'm just going to paint around the edge to give it a little bit of extra protection against rust. Our next step after we drilled our hole, we're going to come back. Right here is going to be our heat shield, right next to our hole above our axle and right above our exhaust. Now this is just glued on, but we're going to need to pull this heat shield down, and it's not going to be getting reinstalled because the hitch itself is actually going to act as a heat shield between our bed and our exhaust. So if we just reach up and start working our way around, we can start pulling it down. Our next step is going to be removing our exhaust bracket right here, just behind the axle on the passenger side. Now, there's going to be a bolt coming from the bottom going up, and there's also going to be one on the inside of the frame rail that's going to be going out. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket to remove these. Now they're bolts removed, I'm just going to slide our bracket forward and pop it off the rest of the way. Now you may need to get a pair of pliers or a pry bar to take this off fully. And we're going to set this aside because it will be reinstalled later. Now on some applications, we're going to come up to our cross member here between the frame and our bed, and just right behind that we're going to have to put a notch in so we can get our bars in for our gooseneck. So I'm going to come over and, like I said, just a little bit behind that cross member, and we're just going to put a triangle shape just like that, and we're going to cut a notch out right here. Now I'm going to be using a rotary tool to cut out our notch here. Now with our notch cut out here, we're gonna take our crossbar, and the one we're gonna use is gonna have 3 notches in it. One here and 2 on the other end. And we're gonna insert this right here in front of where our notch is. And we're gonna go on the front side of the shock mount on the passenger side. Now once we have it in there, we're gonna need to go underneath the side of the truck, and we're gonna have to do a little bit of prying to get it put in place. Now right here, there's the notch where our shock is. And we're gonna need to rotate the bar just a little bit. We can get past our shock mount, and we can start sliding it back. Now this bar is gonna come all the way back, as far back as we can get it, against this other cross beam on the bed. Possibly a pry bar or a pair of pliers to get it where you need it. Now, once we get our bar all the way back to our crossbar here, I'm just gonna take a pair of channel locks. I'm gonna grab it and I'm gonna rotate it so that the holes in this piece here is up and down. And then our bar, the top section, is butted up against our crossbar here on our bed. Now we're gonna take our other bar that has 2 notches, and we're gonna do the same thing, sliding it in from the driver's side, going towards the passenger side. Next, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna grab a pair of pliers. We're gonna grab our bar, and once we get it lined up on our frame rails, we can rotate it around. Now we're gonna take our center section, and with an extra set of hands, we're gonna put it in place while our extra set of hands is gonna maneuver our exhaust out of the way so we can get it up in here. Now, you wanna go over your fuel lines and everything else first. And then over your exhaust. And at the same time, the exhaust is going to help hold it in place. Now that we have it roughly in place, and the exhaust is going to hold it up, we can start to put our bolts in. Now our extra set of hands is going to get in the back of the truck, and they're going to line up the top section of our hitch with the hole we drilled, so that when we put our hardware in place, it's all going to line up correctly and we know exactly where it needs to be. We'll go ahead and move our crossbar and butt it up against our center section here, and we're going to take a 1/2-inch bolt followed by a flat washer, and we're going to insert it from the outside of our crossbar, and we're going to go through the center section of our hitch. And once we have that in place, we're going to follow it up with a lock washer, and then finally a 1/2-inch nut. We're going to tighten it down hand tight for right now. And we're going to repeat the same process we just did with this bolt with the other 2 remaining bolts on each end of our crossbar and center section. Now our back bar here, we're going to need to move forward and again butt it up against our center section here. So we may need to rotate it back down, get it close to where we need it, and then we can come back with a pry bar or a pair of pliers to get it back into the position we need. Tap it into place, and now we're going to repeat the same process with our hardware in the 3 remaining holes on our back section. Get everything lined up correctly, and once we get our hardware in place, we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the other holes remaining on our center section and rear beam. Next, we're going to be installing our side plates, and our hardware is going to be utilizing this hole here just forward of our crossbar, this large hole somewhat in the middle of our 2 crossbars, and this hole back here behind our rear crossbar. Now, just to make it a little bit easier on myself, Before we lower this down and put our side plates in place, I'm going to take my 3/4 inch bolt right here. They provide you with this special washer, and this is going to be used on the driver's side. And we're going to take our 3/4 inch bolt and come in the inside of the frame and hang it right here. So I'm going to take my bolt and put it on the inside of my frame there. And then I'm going to take my 1/2 inch bolts and I'm going to put it through the corresponding hole in the frame as well. One here. Now this one may be a little challenging to get through just because of the location of the gas tank. Now that we have our hardware loosely in place, I'm going to take one of the supplied spacers. I'm going to put it right over our 3/4 inch bolt. Now with all of our hardware in place, I'm going to take our side plate here, and the way we know this is for the driver's side, for one, it's going to have 4 holes in the center section here, and it's also going to have a sticker showing you on your handle to unlatch and latch the ball. So we're going to take this, and we're going to line it up with our hardware, trying not to knock it in. Once we have it loosely in place, I'm going to let it sit there and hang on our hardware. Now, here on our 3/4 inch bolt, I'm going to take a lock washer. I'm going to put that on our bolt. Then I'm going to follow it up with a nut. And I'm just going to put everything on here hand tight for right now. Now for our 1/2 inch bolts on the ends here, I'm going to take a 1/2 inch flat washer, followed by a lock washer, and then finally I'm going to take a nut and put that on the end. And again, we're just putting everything in hand tight for right now. Now we're going to repeat the same process for the remaining bolt. Now we have remaining bolts here, tying in our side plate with our crossbars. We're going to take a 1/2 inch bolt and a flat washer, and coming from the outside, going towards the center of our side plate, we're going to install the bolt like that, and that's going to be followed up by a lock washer, and then finally a nut. We're going to do the same thing over here with the bolt facing in and the nut on the inside of our center section. And our nut. Now there's only going to be a few differences here on the passenger side. We're still going to be using our 3/4 inch bolt, but instead of the special washer, we just have a regular 3/4 inch washer that's going to be going on. So if we come to the back side of our frame here, install our 3/4 inch bolt here, and our 2 1/2 inch bolts will be utilizing this hole right in front of our front crossbar, and back here right below the bed cross member, this hole right here. Now with all the hardware in place, we're going to put that same spacer on the passenger side. Then we can take our side plate and we can install it and hang it on our existing hardware in there. And once we have that in place, then we can go ahead and come back and do the same process with the nuts and washers, just like we did on the driver's side. Now that we have all of our hardware in place, we're going to come back and we're going to torque all of our center section bolts first, and we're going to torque them down to the amounts specified in the instructions. And we're going to repeat the same process and torque down all the remaining hardware in our center section. Now with our center section bolts torqued down, we're going to come to our side plate, and we're going to start with these and torque these 1/2 inch bolts down to the specified amount in the instructions. And I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch socket on one end and a 3/4 inch wrench on the other. And we're going to repeat that process for the remaining 1/2 inch bolts. Now for these side plate bolts, it's going to be easier if you put the torque wrench on the outside and have a wrench on the inside frame rail, just because of everything in the way, like the shocks and the exhaust. We're going to torque those to the specified amount in the instruction as well, still using the same 3/4 inch socket and 3/4 inch wrench. And we'll repeat that process for the remaining bolt back here. Now that all our 1/2 inch bolts are torqued down, we're going to torque down our 3/4 inch bolt. And here, I'm going to be using an 1 1/8" socket and an 1 1/8" wrench on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and get my socket on here. And I'll go underneath and go to the back side and hold the bolt head with the wrench. Now that we have the entire section torqued down, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Next, we're going to be installing our handle for our hitch here. And if we take our handle and coming from underneath the bed, we can feed the handle out. And we're going to line up this loop in the handle with the square hole right here on our hitch. Now, I do want to mention that the handle is going to go on the front side of our hitch towards the cab, and then we're going to come back with our carriage bolt and we're going to feed it through from the back going towards the front of the cab, making sure that it goes through our handle, and then we're going to come back with our 5/16 flange nut and we're going to put it on the back side. You just, when installing this, you just want to be careful and make sure that your handle is around the bolt and that the carriage bolt and nut will sandwich the handle in there. And we're just going to snug it down hand tight and then come back and tighten it up all the way. And I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch socket and I'm going to snug it down. Not crazy, but just nice and snug so we don't have to worry about that carriage bolt backing out. Next, to install our safety chain loops on the outside of our bed, we're going to come underneath here and we're going to have 2 holes on either side of our receiver tube right here. We're going to have 2 here, and we're going to have 2 on either side of our handle. Now, we're going to need to drill a 1/2 inch hole through the bottom of our bed using these holes as a template. Now, I'm going to start out using a 1/4 inch drill bit to start a pilot hole, so when I do go and make my final 1/2 inch hole, it'll be a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process and drill the other 3 remaining holes. Now, with our pilot holes drilled, I'm going to come back with a 1/2 inch drill bit and finish drilling my final hole. Now I'm going to repeat that and finish drilling out my other remaining holes. Now here's the holes we drilled from underneath. We're going to take our supplied U-bolts and we're going to drop them into place, and we're going to go back underneath and put some hardware on them. Next, we come underneath the truck. Here's our U-bolts hanging down. We're going to take our spring here, and with the larger end facing up, we're going to slip it over one end of our U-bolt, and then we're going to take the supplied nuts and we're going to thread it on so that the bottom of the U-bolt is flush with the nut. So it's going to end up looking up just like that, and we'll repeat the same process on the other side. Next, we're going to bring our attention back to our exhaust mount that we took off, and we're going to get the supplied bracket to lower our exhaust down. Now, first, we're going to take a 5/16 carriage bolt, and we're going to put it in this bottom hole here on the flat end with the single hole. And we're going to mount and thread that through the bottom part of our exhaust clamp, followed up with a 5/16 flange nut. Now for now, we're just going to put this on hand tight. We're going to take our 1/4 inch carriage bolt here, and we're going to insert it through the back half so it comes out back here. Next, we're going to take our 1/4 inch flange nut and we're going to put it on the back side just hand tight again. Now that we have everything all snugged up by hand, we're going to come back, and for our 5/16 bolt and flange nut, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch socket to tighten everything up. Now if we come back to our 1/4 inch, I'm going to be using a 7/16 socket to tighten it up as well. Now, to make it a little bit easier to install our exhaust bracket, I'm just going to spray a little bit of penetrating oil into the rubber isolator, making it slip on a little bit easier. So I'm going to take my bracket, making sure that the silver tab facing up is on the outside of the frame, and I'm going to slide it over the rubber isolator, just like that. If we take our supplied spacer right here, we're going to go in between our frame and our bracket right here, and then we're going to feed our carriage bolt through. Next, we're going to take our 5/16 carriage bolt again, and we're going to feed it through to the back side. And again, taking our 5/16 flange nut and tightening it down on the back. And then we're just going to put our flange nut on our carriage bolt, and we're going to come back and tighten it up. And again, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch socket to tighten it up. Now we're going to come out to our handle here on our driver's side, and we're going to pull straight out until it stops, and then slightly rotate the handle while pushing towards the driver's cab, and it'll lock it into place. Now we're going to go ahead and move back into the bed of our truck. Next, we can take our ball, and we're going to drop it down into place. And then we're going to release the handle so the pin can go through, and we're going to make sure that the pin goes all the way through the ball. Now with the pin engaged, there's no way to get the ball out, and it's securely in there. Now the last step, we're going to go ahead and remove the pin again, pull the ball out, and go ahead and grease it up so that we don't have to worry about it getting any corrosion on it. So I'm just going to take a small amount of grease on my hands here. I'm just going to get it nice and lubricated so we don't have to fight when we put our ball in or take it out. We'll go ahead and drop it back into place and re-engage the pin. Now with everything in place, all we have left is to reinstall our spare tire. And then I'll finish up our look at the Custom Underbed Installation Kit for B&W companion fifth wheel trailer hitches. Part number BWG NRK 1111-5.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.